Hello, welcome back to another Michael Bessler's Hipsters review. On today's episode, we are going to do the Immortal Hulk. Now, you're probably wondering, hey Mike, I couldn't help but notice through your hipster glasses that you post-it notes. That's right, folks, mainly because this is incredible. A little backstory on the Immortal Hulk. After the, I have to say, horrible story of Civil War II, mainly because the atrocity that was Civil War II, aimless cash grab of half-witted ideas and terrible. But what happens in Civil War II is Hulk dies. Bruce Banner is killed by Hawkeye. I'm trying my hardest, folks, not to swear here, but after that poopy story, we got an incredible one. A story of, for any Hulk fan, a really, really good read. Now, it's called The Immortal Hulk. Now, this finally dives into what all of us fans thought the Hulk was. The Hulk was immortal, and it deals with, where to start with this book, honestly. Good thing I have a script. See you out there. Sorry. A little hipster humor, I guess. Okay. So, what's so great about the Immortal Hulk is, for any Hulk fan, it comes back to everything that was originally created about the character. For instance, Hulk in this story only comes out at night. When Lee and Jack Kirby's original creation, which instead of the Hulk being surrounded by his anger, that was his trigger, now that came later, mainly with the green skin. For those who don't know, Hulk originally started off as a gray Hulk. Now, there has been a gray Hulk in the comics. His name is Joe Fixit, but that's a completely different character. The original Hulk was gray, but Marvel, which didn't have a lot of money at the time, gray was actually a very hard color to print, and the Hulk was a very big character. So they switched it to one of the easiest and cheapest colors to print, green. And that's how he got his iconic look. But in the first iteration of Bruce Banner, it wasn't his anger that would transform him into the Hulk, it was actually the night, because it was more hinging on the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde angle, and kind of like a weird little werewolf spin too. Now, in this comic, the Hulk only comes out at night. He only does. And throughout the story, we get several callbacks to Hulk's original origin. Now, we also get to find out how it feels to be Bruce Banner and never being able to die. Now, the comic also goes into such an interesting place when it comes to villains. Now, the depiction of Radioactive Man is one that is truly that shivering. Now, with Radioactive Man, he hides away in a cave and sucks the life out of all these people. And the way Hulk kind of deals with him is, let's just say, a particularly brutal way. What Hulk does is, because Radioactive Man is revealed that he did this to himself to get immortality, which harkens back to the beginning of the story with Hulk himself. He turns him into a quadruped, so quad amputee, and buries him under hundreds of rock. I hope you can see that. Yeah, it is a nasty end to a nasty man. Another thing that's great about the book is that the Immortal Hulk series is that you also get different comic book styles, in the fact where you see here it's more basic. This is more your mainstream comic book looking character. Mainly the 3D looking art job, it always looks great, but some people like the classic Jack Kirby kind of look, which is what happens with the story of Hotshot in this comic. Hotshot is a very, very minor, like a D-list supervillain. Like, all he could do is this. Pew pew. He has finger guns. That's what he has. He even says it himself. The human ray gun. Yeah, not you ain't gonna see any Oscar pieces called Hotshot. Let me tell you that much. But one thing that's really great is you get to see how the Hulk dealt with this supervillain in a church. Now, through different perspectives and narratives, and the characters who are actually telling the story, how the Hulk was seen by the public. Now, in the next story, you have something like very accustomed to like BoJack Horseman, which is kind of like these long, lingering shots on just like kind of a weird-looking human face. That's another character's perspective. And then my personal favorite, the old lady's perspective, which sees the story of Hotshot as a heavily anime, like pretty boy, like that's twisted by society. No one understands him, which is just incredibly funny. And then you get to see the preacher's perspective, which has a lot more of a Daredevil kind of feeling towards it, which one iconic image, which kind of ripped off right from Daredevil, is bursting through the plane glass window. And then, see, for the woman's perspective, the Hulk is nearly only seen as a monster, and Hotshot is a good man. Now, for the cop, Hulk is the hero. For the preacher, Hulk is a mere monster. Also very interesting and compelling is the story of Sasquatch. Sasquatch gets involved in the story about at the halfway point, which is really when the story picks up speed. Now, at the beginning, it is a bit meandering, and you kind of have to deal with a couple of slower pacing, but overall, as soon as Sasquatch makes an appearance, it's incredibly fun. Now, one thing that's also really great, and also calls back to another great thing, is they revamp Sasquatch origin, which is they turn it into the same origin. Now, if you recognize that chair, that's because that is the same chair they used in the classic Hulk TV series, and then how Dr. Bruce Banner got his powers. It wasn't through a gamma bomb, it was because of a gamma chair. They also did this for the Marvel Cinematic Universe in The Incredible Hulk, which I personally was not a big fan of because it is so low budget and kind of crappy. The gamma bomb, they originally killed Dr. Banner. More on that later. We'll come back. But Sasquatch, so this is a surprise little cameo of it. And then we jump all the way down to the end of the story, which we'll jump to the end of the story because I'm kind of going a little bit long with this review, mainly because this is one of the most fan letters to Hulk readers of all time. Hulk is personally one of my favorite heroes, and that's why I just love these stories. Now, Hulk is fighting this Sasquatch because he's lost his mind, and it is a pretty brutal fight. It goes on for a very long time, but we start to see images that start to confuse the audience even more, but call back to the classic Hulk even harder. That is Bruce Banner's father. That's right. The whole reason why Bruce Banner becomes a giant rage creature is because the repressed anger he had as a child. That is incredible. He is literally fighting his childhood villain. And if you're like me, the first time you're reading it, you're like, whoa, how does that make any sense? How does this come together? Well, at the very end, at the very end, Hulk absorbs Sasquatch. It literally absorbs him into him. It's insane. Now, that also calls back to the Hulk's classic power. At the very beginning, it was very clear that Hulk could absorb gamma radiation. Like, he's kind of like a vessel for it. Not a lot of comic book writers actually give Hulk this power. They mainly just focus on his strength factor, which, of course, is one of the Hulk's best factors, so it really shouldn't be an issue, but it's very fun how some people just forget about it. Now, the way the comic ends, it excites more Hulk reader fans than anything else, and that is Bruce Banner's father. Dun dun dun. He's now developed into the psyche because Sasquatch was actually an evil demon, not an actual Sasquatch. It was a demon that somehow possessed his father. His father came back from hell to torture his son even more. Is this subconsciously? Is this a real thing? We don't know yet. That's what makes it so, just so much fun as a Hulk reader. Then, to wrap up the story, it's very interesting. Bruce Banner goes on a narrative where he talks about what it's like to die and how it is every time. See, we see that at the original Gamma explosion, Bruce Banner actually died, which a lot of people theorized. But then we also see Hulk getting his head chopped off by Captain America's shield. Then all the times that Hulk has ever died, when he was covered in adamantium, when he was literally struck of all of his gamma radiation, every time, like the time Hawkeye shot him, like I told you. And, oh man, just every time the Hulk always comes back. And see, look, one thing that's really interesting is they have all the Hulk's deaths, but all those deaths are canon. And it turns out, we as the audience find out with Bruce Banner that the whole time he was immortal. He always thought the Hulk would die, he never thought the Hulk would, he always thought the Hulk would eventually run its course, but now he realizes he can never die because the Hulk won't let him. And that is incredibly engaging. The fact of the matter is, who is in control? That has always been a theme in all Hulk stories, and this one delves into it incredibly. Now, if you're a Hulk fan, I would strongly recommend that you check this one out. It is incredibly good, and the callbacks are perfect. There's so many little homages that I couldn't get into in this video, but they are so good and so perfect. Now, for my overall rating, I would have to give it either a 7 or an 8 out of 10. Now, the reason I kind of give it on the low spectrum is because the story is, in fact, very, very slow for the first couple of issues. Now, Radioactive Man is a fun little section, and obviously a hotshot that's also a shining example, but I kind of skipped over the whole beginning because Hulk takes down a whole little drug ring, and there's a one guy who shot someone at a convenience store, and the Hulk tracks them down, and yada. It was a bit more slow. It was a very slow and boring beginning. Meandering, I should say, not boring. But again, for all those Hulk readers, it's a 10 out of 10 for you. Anyone who's a Hulk fan, you will love this. But for the casual viewer, I would give it a 7 out of 10. This has been Michael Bessler's Hipster review. See you next time.